we talked about what happens in a little bit more detail, what you learn in 1 and 2. Now remember, at 2, infrastructure, you have to see the grid to know how to move through it. There's an external grid, and then that's all these words right here. That's how you get up and you go to work. I mean, a lot of people are in what's called a chamber. They call it the chambers of the South, the dirty South, kind of what we call your Southwood. What is a Southwood? So glad you asked. It's basically all your pyramid schemes. That's all your external. It's reciprocal of this one, but it's your external frames as a pyramid scheme. What's a pyramid scheme? Well, that is pyramid schemes, whether you know it or not, is monthly bills, yearly taxes, weekly wages, hourly hire, and you go to work every day because you have bills. The reason why you have bills is because you can't save normal and pay for things with cash, so you have to borrow. And the borrower is servant to the lender. These ones is your head of your pyramid scheme. And this is your tails. That's why it's on our coins, right? So that is your Southwood external. They call it the chambers of the South. They get you into a position where money flows into the top. And who's at the top? So glad you asked. Right? They're at the top. And what are they building? Well, that's for another day. So that's your pyramid schemes. What's the opposite of a pyramid? What would this Northwood be setting up? So glad you asked. That's setting up what's called a foursquare. Foursquare is where everybody equal. What? That sounds like communism. Well, it is and it isn't. Communism is about dictating, controlling. It's got a wicked ruler at the top. It's like an anti-Christ tyrant. Whereas a true foursquare, where everyone had all things in common, is where Christ is at the top and he serves all. He's not ruling over everyone, although he's Lord of Lords and King of Kings. It's all about the greatest serves all. So the higher you climb, the more you serve everyone. And what collapses pyramid schemes are foursquares. That's where everybody at the top and everybody in the middle and everybody at the bottom, they all know the same thing. So now everybody's ahead. And the tail of the serpent is no more. Done. So now it's a foursquare system. That is, in essence, and we can talk about this all day long, what that is, but my key is to get these down, what you learn at every level. Okay? So then we have Northwood, Eastwood, we have the Southwood, and Westwood, right? All right there. So when you build a Westwood inside somebody, it's like a different frequency that radiates from a person. So that comes about them and begins to darken them. You can see that on a scale going down, right? So that's their Westwood. The Westwood darkens them, and you can see it, and it begins to degenerate you, and you begin to age and die. But the secret arts teaches, or Revelation Jesus Christ, is that when you start doing the wisdom of God and you start shining and be perfect, it actually starts quickening your mortal flesh and starts working towards immortality. That's what Paul's pattern is. Paul's pattern is, this is what they hid. Like we talked about last time, they took Paul's pattern, which he played the game of climbing these scales and won. He actually was caught up or raptured. They changed it to an event versus an actual timeline, or a timeline to an actual scale. You have to climb the scale versus wait for an event to happen, and eventually when Jesus comes back, I'll get this like body we're all talking about, right? Like it basically gets you to stop playing the game. So these are the two things that happens there. Now what happens at a day 3 is what we call gather versus scatter. Gather versus scatter. This works in 2 ways. You have your internal gathering and external gathering. The internal is called setup. It's kind of like in pickup artists. They know how to set up a scene. That's the same thing. The external is called your assembly. That's where to assemble. You assemble your body. The more people, this is why as you climb, like in Hollywood, when you get here, you learn how to build your following, right? You learn, it's all sales. You're selling them on what you're carrying. Hopefully it's the Eastwood, but they've been selling on the Westwood. They'll say, feminism, Black Lives Matter, KKK, LGBTQ. That you can actually see that it begins to darken their countenance. Very selfish policies. It makes you like a locust or a leech, right? And it sells you on social justice. It has to trick you. That's gather versus scatter. Like I said, we can dive deeper on these topics, but we only have so much time. So you assemble your body, but you also have to what we call cut cords. That's also internal and external. The internal is called remove stumbling blocks. Stumbling blocks, there's like where you sell them on a policy like feminism, and then you use the feminists to go after the strong man so you can deplete them. They don't really care about women's rights. They had it all set up out of chaos to go after the women, say, look, you have injustice happen to you, and they use them to go after another group. And so now what I'm doing right now is using a day 3 tactic by cutting that cord and removing that stumbling block to show you that you have some Westwood in you as a feminist. It's not good. It's not the virtuous woman. Here, this is about virtue, glory and virtue. The virtuous woman's in Proverbs. It's the last chapter in Proverbs. That's way better. I would sell that instead of feminism because that was what makes a strong woman. Not this. The Westwood actually turns you into a locust and a leech. Not good stuff. So there's other tactics out there to get what you want and without going after somebody else. So that's they have a remove stumbling blocks, internal to Westwood. This is what we call subvert. You've been subverted. The opposite of subvert, which you've been subverted on your Westwood, is to convert. Convert. Right? You've been converted. And the Bible definition of convert, I put an F there. The Bible definition of convert is to hear and see. Right? So you convert them. They hear and they see what they're doing. Right? So we're going to also talk about, to learn, once you see the grid and you learn how to gather inside this grid, you have to build up your body, your army. That's why the apostolic movement is about building your troop, building your army, building your body to where now you're ready to fight. You got to get ready to fight. Fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, right? But you also have to scatter the enemy, right? So to fight, you have to know the way of a vineyard. That's in essence like vines and chains, branches, right? And boughs. That's basically networking. It's how to build a body, right? How to build a body, but a body that's strong eastwards. So this is what we're going to learn at that level. We have all the strategies for that. And what it does, the way of a vineyard, the last thing I'll say about it is they call spread out, stretch out, and pass over, overflow, and let's say build and plant. But you have to do it through your body, through your network, to gather together, to battle. All this is about getting to battle. This is what happens. You're building the Northwood, how to fight against. That's what this is for, how to fight. This is how to get bright. And last thing I'll say, very, very last thing. What they did was they took away, to weaken your hand, they had to do what's called takeaway. That's the ability to build. They took away, they said, you can't be perfect. And Jesus wasn't involved in politics, neither should we. So what happened? They started building their Westwood and started getting into the high places. And then they started building the Chambers of South. So now the church thinks that, like, when you sell and flip houses and you put someone in there, you're really a henchman for the banks, is what you are. And you screwed someone for 30 years on a 30-year mortgage. But we all accepted that as normal. Like, that's the only way, because that's the only thing we knew. They took away what Foursquares were. They took all that away. So they took away two things. The Eastwood of the daily sacrifice. They took away the daily sacrifice, like I said in Daniel. So the only way you climb this thing Eastwood wise to get bright, is by, you gotta sacrifice yourself. I spelled fice. Sacrifice. And the other one was, they took away the Northwood they took away the keys of David. They hid all of this. They went inside the church, changed all the doctrines. And now they weakened. And this is a weak hand. Weak hand. To have a strong hand, you're going to learn how to brighten yourself and do a daily sacrifice, and you're going to learn how to fight and get in position. That's what this, it's how to take over a city, how to go to a city. Last thing I'll say is that Ecclesiastes 10:15 says, the labor of the fools wearies every one of them, because they know not how to go to a city. You have to internally know how to go to a city, and externally. That's 1 through 3 in a nutshell. There's a lot of detail to this stuff. It's what we're carrying. We're going to get into 4 on the next one. Thank you.